Hey guys, so as I mentioned in my last video, this has been in the works all year. What you're watching right now is what all of 2023 was leading to. There were hidden clues all throughout my entire channel. For those of you who followed me on Letterboxd, you saw the pieces falling into place. Those of you who follow me on Twitter, no. I did a Twitter challenge at the beginning of last year that was a movie for each month of the year, so I had to wait until the end of the year to make a video on it, and now I'm making a ranking on it. So yeah, 12 people on Twitter suggested me 12 movies, one for each month of the year. I watched them all in those months. It was movies I had never seen before, and now I'm going to talk about them. And I'm really excited to kind of talk about these. It's going to be a little bit more laid back than a normal video essay, but as I've mentioned probably too much, my life's been super crazy right now. This is probably the last video I'm going to be recording in the US for a while, which is wild. But I'm going to put these into a tier ranking. I hope you guys enjoy. I can't wait to get into these movies. They span different genres, different mediums, different decades, different languages. I'm really excited to talk about such a diverse selection of movies. And maybe you guys will find something that you want to watch along the way. This video may not be super clickable for people who are not already subscribed to the channel, but if you're watching this, thanks, and comment a suggestion for down below, and I may do this again next year, but with YouTube suggestions. That would be fun. Again, check my letterbox to see what I haven't seen and get suggesting. But let's get into the ranking. So, spoilers for the rest of the ranking. There is only one F-tier movie, and I almost felt bad for putting it down here, but I don't, because I actually don't know the person who suggested this to me. I was too lazy to go back and find the kind of thread that led this person to suggesting me this movie, but I don't know them. They probably aren't going to watch this video, and this movie was weird. Also, it's got some pretty messed up content, so trigger warning for these things that you see before you. If you do not want to hear about any of that stuff, skip ahead. More pleasant things ahead of us. This is the only F tier. Let's get into it. Alright, I'm gonna be honest. When this film was first suggested to me, I was actually pretty optimistic. Joko Anwar is probably the most well-known Indonesian horror filmmaker in the US that I personally can think of. I had heard of his work before. And, you know, it looked interesting. It had a cool title. It had a cool poster. It had a 3.3 average on Letterboxd. It was exciting, especially to get a foreign horror film. I feel these often take horror in a different direction than a lot of American horror does. And I want to give Joko the benefit of the doubt because this was his third feature-length narrative film, and I've heard some of his later work is pretty decent, but this was just bad. It was just bad on so many levels. Which, at the end of the day, one of the biggest reasons this just doesn't work is that it isn't very scary. This movie is incredibly derivative of many greats, especially Cronenberg and Lynch, but it seems to have completely misunderstood what makes their work memorable, disturbing, and sometimes downright scary. It takes itself on this disorienting journey as our main character Gambir is a sculptor artist who has recently found great success with his statues of pregnant women. It's gotten him acclaim and money, but he feels he wants to move in a different artistic direction and is distressed about something, as there's a lot of tension with family and those supporting his art career. Slowly throughout the film, he sees some suspicious activity revolving around a kid who seems to have been abused and kidnapped, and he keeps seeing messages all around from this kid trying to get his help. If you think that doesn't have much to do with the art plotline, you'd be right. But we get our own special plotline with the art, as his wife gets pregnant and wants an abortion. And there's this whole weird thing with this guy at the abortion clinic, and it feels extremely anti-abortion in just like the weirdest way, making it feel super weird and creepy as Gavin feels a lot of guilt over what they're doing. This leads even weirder as his wife essentially tells him to put the fetus, which for some reason they take home, and put it into the pregnant belly of the statue he's working on. And he does, and then he just keeps doing it as they keep getting fetuses for some reason. And that's just, they just throw that in there. That's kind of happening. He follows this evidence, though, of this abused kid while this is happening, that leads him to a weird business that gives private rooms to watch a secret TV channel with people getting tortured in some honestly really out-of-place, disturbing ways for this film. I guess not out of place, but just the tone of the film never matches any of its disturbing content, including a channel featuring the kid he saw trying to escape. Lots of important business people seem to go here, as well as his best friend. And guys, I swear, this isn't even as weird as this movie gets. He keeps investigating further, which gets people at the business all upset, including his friend, and he also finds that his wife no longer loves him. Oh, also, just because it's important, but very awkwardly sprinkled into the plot, and I have no better way to bring it up, in their house, by his little art studio, his wife has a door that was hidden, that he is forbidden to open. Get it? The forbidden door. That's about as much as they explain it. Anyway, all this tension and lies and manipulation and watching this kid get tortured and eventually kill his abusers and himself leads our main character to a breaking point. But he puts on a smile and goes to another art exhibit around Christmas, being super friendly with everyone who was lying to him and leading him around. He invites them all over for a nice, fancy Christmas meal to celebrate all of their success, and we get probably the only good scene in the movie. He uses poison that was also really poorly set up earlier, that paralyzes people temporarily, however they can still hear, feel, and see everything. And then he does a big "I know what you've all been doing" speech as he murders them one by one. It's still not the greatest thing in the world, especially for the plot, but this was the first moment, an hour and a half in, that I felt the movie was doing something cohesive. The gore and the blood were fun, and there had just been so much weird, stressful nothingness that it feels satisfying to see him just straight up kill everyone. I was like, well, the rest of the movie wasn't perfect, but at least it had a cool ending. But I was wrong. The ending isn't done yet, and there are still 20 minutes left. And oh boy, they're an interesting 20 minutes. After murdering everyone, Gambir goes back to the forbidden door and breaks it down to find that the boy and his abusers were being filmed behind this door. And he finds them all dead. He then starts tripping out and remembering that the boy wasn't dead, and that the boy was him. We wake up in a freaking mental institution, and he's locked up, and all of this has been inside his head the whole time. All the characters, like his wife and best friend, are all doctors and nurses, but we're still not done yet. We then go to a scene in a Catholic church where a character we don't know confesses to killing his wife and asks if he's going to hell. The priest tells him that there is no hell. Then he tells him to go home and he can see his wife anytime he likes. Then they do some more nonsense, and the priest brings up the forbidden door, and that everyone has one, and the priest is revealed to be the same guy who plays Gambir, and then he looks directly into the camera, like, I'm pretty sure on purpose, and then the movie freaking ends. It's the most insane nothing ending in the world, and it goes along 0% with the rest of the film. By the way, I didn't talk about it much because there's so much going on, even on a plot level, but the filmmaking is just also not good. It feels extremely low budget and film student-y. The lighting isn't great, the audio is pretty bad at parts, the performances can be sometimes downright abysmal. The camera feels like it never knows what it needs to be covering. It's not a fun film to get through. But for a brief moment, they give you at least a cool conclusion, and then they actually go for the "it was all in his head" ending. The freaking ending that is so bad it's a common joke that that's the ending for a confusing movie. And then they add another layer, and it just makes you feel like you're losing your mind, but in a bad, not fun, not clever, or cool way. Also, again, the content in this is a lot to deal with. I can handle a lot more troubling, problematic, and sometimes downright gross content in Lynch and Cronenberg's works because it almost always has a purpose and is used for excellent thematic and horror effect. But here, it just feels like extreme gross shock factor and weird anti-abortion Catholic guilt politics. It's bad on almost every level, and even when it feels like it's going somewhere, it's not. It's so bad, and it was a really terrible experience. But I want to give another one of his movies a chance, because, it's bad, but it's not the worst thing in the world. And I hate being this mean to it. I just screamed into your ears that it's terrible. But there are parts that are pretty decent, and that I could see the groundwork of what could be elevated here to make a decent movie. But as is, I cannot give it higher than 2 out of 5. I never want to watch it again, and I still have no idea why somebody would suggest this to somebody they didn't know. Again, I lost who actually had suggested this to me, but again, it was somebody I didn't know, so this was just a very out-of-pocket decision. Alright, yeah, and we're gonna skip all the way on to C tier, because really, that's the only, bad movie on this list, and even C feels a little, mean to these films, but we'll get into it. Again, I feel kind of mean for putting this low, because this is a great film. I really enjoyed it. It's sweet, it's simple, it's exciting, it's, refreshing. It's a short, sweet film about a brother and his friends playing a prank on his younger brother to make him think he killed the older brother. This makes the younger brother both scared that he'll be arrested and excited about the freedom he has as he runs away to Coney Island to see the world, ride the rides, and start his new, criminal life as the fugitive. It's slow and shot with a surprisingly modern-feeling lens that makes the almost documentary feel of this warm, humanistic look at the world through a young child's eyes in the early 50s come to life. That was the craziest run-on sentence I think I've ever written. Honestly, there's not too much I feel I can add about this movie overall. The story doesn't particularly speak to me or do anything special, but it's just kind of this amazing piece of film history and a fun ride. Richie Andrusko, who plays Joey, the younger brother, feels so real, and I don't know if it's the performance or just luck or how they went about the filming, but it's honestly incredible that his performance turned out this good. The movie is so contemplative, and it really takes its time with beautiful atmospheres and scenes like the bottle collecting on the beach that are weirdly engaging. I don't know, it's not perfect. The first half, when it's trying to get to what the story actually is, kind of dragged, and I was worried I was gonna be super bored. Honestly, it's not one I would rush to see again, but it truly is something special. Every time I think back on it, I can pull some cool new memory despite its only 80-minute runtime. It's funny, it's cute, well written, and is doing something really genuine and interesting on a cinematic level, especially for the 50s. People have often compared this to French New Wave, and I can definitely see it, and honestly, I can't recommend this enough. I gave it a solid 3.5 out of 5. I believe Kayla suggested me this one. I'll link their Letterboxd in the description. Fascinating stuff. Honestly, it's cinematography and shot composition and lighting are just what brings this film to life. I know that's pretty much what I already said, but I can't get over just the way this movie feels to watch. It's really cool. Our next C-tier film is more or less in the same boat as The Little Fugitive, as a film that I really enjoy. I think it's really effective at what it's doing, but it's not really super up my alley. It's not one that I would jump to. And this was actually my second film from Todd Haynes, which I've now seen 4 of his films. I watched, since I've seen this, Carol and May December, which I absolutely adored both of those films, which makes Dark Waters, and I think Wonderstruck is the other one I've seen from him, even weirder in retrospect. I can't believe those are all by the same director. But as for Dark Waters itself, it's an odd one. I often really struggle with biopics like these. I understand them a lot when they center around a person or a group where it's natural to want to use the conventions of normal filmmaking versus documentary filmmaking and writing. At the end of the day, this just doesn't feel to me like it personally grows much beyond an interesting alternative to a documentary. This was the January film suggestion, the very first one I watched, and having watched it essentially a year ago, I can honestly say there's not that much that's memorable for me with any specific performance or character. I don't really remember anything about Mark Ruffalo as the main character, and I honestly completely forgot that Anne Hathaway was even in this, and I really like her. But that's not inherently a huge slight to the film itself with its goals in mind. As a story documenting and crafting a cohesive emotional narrative about the evils of capitalism and the permanent destruction of our world that it's caused, it really is effective. It's bleak, and the cinematography, lighting, and color palette reflect that in a way that's still really pleasant to watch as you're dragged through this horrific, and I do mean horrific, true story. The investigations are engaging more for the filmmaking and the real-life story than the characters, but it still works, you know? At the end of the film, I was extremely mad and sad, which I feel are appropriate reactions. It is a powerful and draining film, but I wouldn't jump to return to it. Interestingly enough, Erin Brockovich, a film I watched more recently, had a lot of similar themes and ideas. It's a Soderbergh film that follows the basic general premise of a real-life person investigating into a company and finding out what horrible medical things they did to us and destruction they've done to us that they tried to cover up. So, go Team America. But I feel that movie works a lot better for me in many ways because it centers itself around Erin and makes it more emotionally engaging. Of course, I could easily see an argument against that because Erin Brockovich brings a lot more uplifting and triumphant story to the page versus what Dark Waters is going for, which is a lot more dark and compelling in that darkness. I don't know. I know Erin Brockovich feels a lot more accessible. I would still very much recommend this movie to anyone. It's an important story to be shared, and if more people will watch this than a documentary, then so be it. I also gave it a 3.5 out of 5. I believe Ryan Lee suggested this to me. Link to his Letterboxd page down below, of course. Can you guys keep a secret? These tier lists are actually broken down by rating, and I didn't want to just say, this I gave this, this I gave this. I thought that would be boring. But now I really don't want to say at the end of all of these movies, and I gave this one 4, and I gave this one 4, and I gave this one 4. So I'm just gonna spoil it. I'm gonna throw it out there. I'm just gonna put the ball in your guys' court and say that all of this tier are 4-star films, which is pretty epic, pretty great. I can't believe we're already to this grade of films. So you guys just have really good taste is the moral of the story. To quote the all-knowing Shifrilus, the type of movie animation is cinema people on Twitter will go their entire life without watching. And it's true. This is a depressingly haunting, amazingly crafted film, unlike anything I have ever seen. Its use of 2D and 3D stop motion makes for one of the most engaging and compelling and interesting to look at. Literally just mind-blowingly well-crafted films I have ever seen, as well as there being a genuine, true story with a great message put behind this fairy tale facade. This is an insane portrait of abuse and atrocities brought to life only through whispers and imagery, pointing towards its true meaning. It's not hard to sense the pain and suffering behind this movie. The blood-chilling tale of a story and people who are put under some of the worst torture and suffering ever done on this earth. And despite the abstract nature of the film itself never fully reflecting the tragedies it's based on, you feel them in every disturbing frame. You feel transported into this sickening world of paranoia and suffering. How the house morphs, changes, and adapts as it blends paints, paintings, objects, and actual physical characters is incredible. The 3D work is some of the most haunting things I've ever seen on screen. A single frame from this movie is scarier than most horror movies I've ever seen and carries more thematic weight. The narrative itself, following our character Maria as she tries to hide and make things seem okay, even though it's increasingly apparent that they aren't and never will be, does drag at parts, but it's just incredible. That is my only problem with this movie on the whole. It's just not always the most engaging thing in the world. Something visually exciting and unexpected is always going on, but it takes a lot of time for you to feel like you understand what's happening, and not particularly in a good way. But I honestly can't complain about this too much. This film is doing something so unique and powerful at the end, and honestly I would praise so much of this on just a visual and craft level. I have literally never seen another film even attempt to do something like this. I can't imagine how long it took to make, and there are moments that are just so haunting and visually abstract. This film left such a big impact on me. I don't remember who suggested this one to me, but I am suggesting it to you, and especially if you care about animation in all its forms, because this is a work of art, and a truly powerful story to boot. It just drags sometimes, especially for its short runtime. Guys, American Psycho is a fraud. I realized while watching this, it's practically beat for beat the same, just instead of about Wall Street, it's about police in Italy, which is actually pretty epic. It literally goes through the same thing where it's a killer of a high prestige position following his sexual urges, and then leading people astray during the investigation, and then when he finally thinks the evidence has caught up with him, the people pretty much tell him, no, you couldn't have been the one to do that. You're a police officer. That would be crazy. So, it's American Psycho. Man, what a gripping and exciting movie this is. It's incredibly early 70s Italian feeling, down to the goofy score that somehow works for the serious moments, and the beginning of pushing some of the boundaries generally accepted in film then. I think the first half has some structure problems as it's trying to get off the ground with setting up the murder, the characters who will be at play, and the government system itself, whereas something like, I don't know, for a random example, American Psycho is really efficient in how fast it can set up Patrick Bateman, who he is, how goofy he is, and what he does. But American Psycho is a full-blown comedy, so it can get away with doing this in a lot more in-your-face manner with silly voiceover. This film is a lot more serious, or it takes us much longer to get going with this extreme show don't tell. The performances are phenomenal. Jean-Maria Volante, sorry if I'm butchering his name, has such a menacing screen presence and such a punchable face, which I feel is a requirement for a role like this. And really where this film stands out and works so well is in its political commentary, which is as potent for America now as it was for Italy in the early 70s, whatever that says. I described it in my review as downright scary when I first watched it, and I stand by that. It reflects the corruption of fascist government so well, the divide between citizen and those in power. It doesn't matter that he's killed anyone. If anything, to the rest of the government, this is almost a good thing. It shows he's competent, committed, and ready for a promotion. I don't know, many of the best and most memorable scenes are those within the government playing this narrative of sickening support of the powerful over the powerless to a painful level. It's fantastic. It looks incredible, it's dripping with Italian cinema charm, bright colors, beautiful cinematography. I absolutely love the twists and turns it takes in terms of how it approaches why he kills people, and the photography scenes are really fantastic and really memorable too. It's one of the standout parts of this film. I just love how natural everything feels in this, despite a lot of its stylistic swings. It's so good and really, really fun, especially if you do like American Psycho, because honestly, they're just really surprisingly similar plots. So I cannot suggest this enough. I bet you could do like a really, really fun triple feature if you did American Psycho, this, and Memories of Murder. That would be fantastic. I need to do that sometime. I believe Adam Johnson suggested this to me. You know the drill. Down in the description, check out his Letterboxd. Ah, the A tier, almost the cream of the crop. My 4.5s that are just really, really fantastic films. They're not quite my personal favorites, and I may have some problems with them, but these are all complete banger films. No joke. Wow, this is this is just the most cursed cast in the world. Like seriously, I don't know how this happened. But wow. That being said, I was genuinely surprised with this movie. I am not a big Edgar Wright fan. I think he's often really kind of misplaced and misguided in his use of stylization. I think his scripts leave a little bit to be desired and are more all about flash, 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 and not about telling that compelling of a narrative. But these are all just personal opinions. I probably just got half of the audience pissed off already. But, like, I don't think he makes bad movies. Just movies that I don't personally connect with that much. With all that being said, Baby Driver rocks. It's entertaining, its gimmick never feels like it gets in the way, but instead enhances the editing and enjoyment of the world. The characters, especially Baby himself, yes, that's all I'll call him because that's such a sick name, are all engaging and fun to watch, and the tension and ebb and flow of power keeps you on the edge of your seat the whole time. The action sequences are visceral in a way that I have never seen Edgar Wright pull off before, and it gets to the point where I genuinely believe that any of these characters could die or get seriously injured at any point, which is so rare to get in action movies like this. As I have before, I will say that the driving sequences aren't my favorite. It's exhilarating driving, and the moves and everything are incredible, but chases aren't my thing. I can often get pretty bored during them, even in a film like this when they're fantastic. I'd struggle to feel any weight from the chases themselves and get pulled in any way. Surprisingly, that didn't take away from my enjoyment of this too much, and as much as I make fun of these actors for almost all being terrible, horrible people who shouldn't still be working in the industry, they unfortunately did all give fantastic performances. It's probably my favorite performance from Ansel Elgort outside of maybe West Side Story. I care for and understand Baby in a way I really wasn't expecting when getting into this film. I love seeing why he gets pulled into the life he does. Even his romance plot, despite how weirdly Freudian it is really interesting to watch. I just care about Baby. Except for the gloves, man. You're killing me with the gloves. I understand why he would throw them away because of what they represent and blah 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 blah, but those are sick gloves. You could not work for him and also take the gloves. I don't know, I was like yelling at the screen when I was watching this movie and he threw away the gloves. I was like, no, I'll take them. I'll take the gloves. Also, a cool element of this film for me personally is that I'm from Atlanta, and despite so many movies getting filmed here, it's very rare to see movies set here, so to see the streets of Atlanta and know a lot of these places in the film is cool. This film was suggested to me by Robbie, my brother, who also helped me some with this thumbnail, which is epic. Go check out his Letterboxd and the movie podcast we do together. Birdman is such a weird and sad film, and not for the reasons I was expecting going into it. It's kind of funny that one of the biggest complaints that you'll hear about this film is that it's way too pretentious and it takes itself way too seriously, which it does, but that's kind of directly what I feel the text is going for, which already I think makes me sound pretty pretentious, so maybe we were just made for each other. Edward Norton's character, Mike, is a complete joke, yet they can still do and say something significant about art. Their theater productions aren't incredible because they're the peak of writing, directing, and acting as Michael Keaton's character wants them to be. He sees these shows as an egotistical passion, and he believes that's what makes Mike great. But what makes the theater and this form of art so unique, and what makes it come together in a way that is always far beyond what the people working on the production think it will be, is the community and crossroads of passion. Creative minds working together towards one goal through the chaos. This film captures, even in my limited theater experience, both working on the production end and acting end, the manic energy of a live production so well. It ends up being that pretentiousness that defines and leads to the downfall and crushing misunderstandings of the film's ending. One of the other significant complaints about this movie is its big quote-unquote gimmick. It's one continuous shot, save for a couple cuts here and there. Many people took this with the pretentious script as just Oscar bait and called it pointless, but honestly, this doesn't feel true to me. The cinematography and editing bring this film to life in such a unique way, especially following that manic energy of working on a production that I mentioned. I felt swept away into the chaos and troubles of all these characters, the eccentrics, egos, and true art hiding behind it. I even forgot at parts that there even was a gimmick that the film had going on. I'm trying to talk about this in as concise of a way as I can. This film just has so much going on with the structure and text and subtext that this film plays with, and I feel like it hit the wrong chord with so many people. Partially that's because of the last thing I haven't talked about, the superhero stuff. Birdman came out in 2014 along with Captain America and the Winter Soldier, and the first Guardians of the Galaxy, and, oh yeah, Amazing Spider-Man 2, and Big Hero 6. If you don't recall this time of movies, this was right at the rise of something big, the superhero movie golden era. We still didn't quite know what all it would lead to, but despite superhero movies having been around for a long time at this point, this time it was different. And within this new era of superhero movies, you have those who were left behind in the weirder, almost considered embarrassing era of superheroes. Michael Keaton, of course, had played a superhero role from this time. And then the film kind of ingeniously plays with the idea of this washed-up superhero actor trying to break into quote-unquote real art. Not to say that Michael Keaton himself is washed up, but it plays so well into the themes. The lengths of his superhero past follow him into this new life, bringing an abstract look at an alternate personality that Keaton's character has. That is, the superhero he played, Birdman. And it's shown that he has powers, kind of. It plays with reality and what's real and what's not. It ties into this funny and beautiful internal struggle, grappling with the people who view superhero movies as weird, artless trash, and those who view the world of pretentious arts and egos as silly and hollow. And then it leads the way to a brutal ending that, in my opinion, given the state of acting and actors right now, especially around superhero movies today, like, look at The Flash, man. It makes for one of the most devastating endings to a movie I've seen. There are just so many layers to what it's doing, and it's not even my favorite thing on this list by far. It's just a cool and surprisingly thoughtful movie with some fun gimmicks and funny performances that somehow is extremely cohesive that made me long to be in a production again. I don't remember who suggested this to me, but they're really cool, I guarantee.
Now it's time for the S tier. And if you suggested me one of these movies, you are a certified cool person. And you can put that on your resume. This is such an odd movie to put at the top of my S tier. It feels kind of... This is such a weird movie to put as my first S tier, especially coming after the two movies I just talked about. Birdman, I was trying my best to be brief because there was so much context and subtext and interesting things to dig into, and this is just a simple coming-of-age story. But, I don't know, it's one that really spoke to me.
It follows the character of Oliver Tate as he tries to woo and date Jordana, a troublemaking girl from his school. Through his relationship struggles, he starts to understand and empathize with the fact that his parents' relationship is falling apart. Oh, and also he's just a terrible person and a terrible partner in a really funny and overly sincere way. And it just, I don't know, the movie feels good. It's really hard to pull off a story like this. I mean, I was a pretty big jerk in many ways during middle school. I wasn't socially aware enough to know if something I was saying was especially rude, yet I got along well with people most of the time and had a lot of friends, which led to me sometimes hurting those friends and struggling to have those relationships for things I didn't even fully understand. So then you have Oliver, who goes full Greg Heffley over here, but yet the movie, even with its stylization and quote-unquote trademark
quirkiness. It just has a genuine amount of heart and realness to wanting to understand the emotions that these characters are going through. It's a very stereotypical, quirky coming-of-age story to the point that people have made fun of this quite consistently for it, but I enjoyed a lot of its running bits and humor, and especially the pretentious dialogue and the monologues Oliver would do when writing or narrating. And despite it being cumbersome in its quirky teen romance-ness, I never felt like these aspects ever took away from the film because it was so tongue-in-cheek about the whole script. It knew exactly what it wanted to be, how it wanted to present its characters, and how it was going to take this very unique look into how a teen views this kind of relationship struggle and narrative. And I don't know, I think that was really beautiful. And I feel like I'm maybe one of the only people, at least on Letterboxd, who likes this movie as much as I do. I felt really emotionally connected to the characters, and I laughed throughout and cried at the end. And I thought it was just a really good use of narrative to explore something like this. I think the movie looks great despite looking really cliche. I think the editing is consistently funny and snappy. It's just got a lot of charm. I don't know, it's just a simple, nice indie movie, and I had a fantastic time. It wouldn't be the first thing I would return to on the list, but I don't think I would change anything about it, honestly. And especially when I first watched it in March, it was kind of the coming-of-age story I needed. Also, this is directed by Richard Ayoade, that one actor from Paddington 2 who does the whole marmalade bit.
And a substance later identified as marmalade was found here.
And is this the same marmalade?
Yes, it is.
And that's pretty epic. This movie was suggested to me by Gavin, linked to his Letterboxd below.
My first outing with Ari Aster, and yeah, maybe it's a little overhyped and over-talked about, but I cannot overstate how much this is just up my alley when it comes to horror. Just great performances, nice slow burn tension, with really fun sprinkled in lore bits and supernatural moments. It's just fantastic.
I've always claimed that quote-unquote spiritual supernatural horror is usually some of my least favorite. I think that's mostly because I was just burnt out with a lot of possession movies, like anything in the Conjuring universe or stuff similar to that. Nothing about those movies are really especially horrifying or memorable to me. On the other hand, this takes the more folklore view of supernatural horror. Most of the film's horror comes from the walls feeling like they're closing in around our characters for mysterious reasons, not from an easily pointed out monster or demon. This film has cultivated such a great atmosphere, exacerbating that feeling of overwhelming grief and the kind of unknown and unease of the loss of a family member that you didn't know very well. I do have one problem with the film, and it's how the film itself resolves. I'm a pretty big defender of the ending. I know a lot of people who find it bad. I thought it felt really amazing and earned and terrifying, but again, not everyone feels this way. I feel like somehow the ending holds the audience's hand. It needed to either land in the abstract or go more lore-heavy the entire way through instead of trying to explain every detail right in the end. This doesn't take away that much from my viewing experience because viscerally I enjoyed the horror experience of the film, but it definitely feels like it's being held back a little bit. I think maybe because Ari Aster hadn't really had a big name for himself, he might not have really been throwing it all out there like it feels like he is in Midsummer and Beau is Afraid. But the atmosphere and scares this can pull off through some outstanding performances, especially from Toni Collette and Alex Wolff, and the editing and cinematography just bring together a unique and really exciting for me personally horror experience. There's just such a great sense of space and dread, and this remains one of the most fun and exciting to experience for the first time horror films I've seen in a while. It excites me to watch more from Aster, where I feel like again he probably lets himself loose a bit more, because the craft and the script and the scares are just immaculate here. At the end of the day, this feels like a horror film that I would want to make, which naturally makes me gravitate towards it more. I don't have too much more to add because I feel like at this point this is kind of an overly talked about movie, but really for me, if a horror movie can get into my head and make me actually scared by some of what it's doing and viscerally give me goosebumps, it hits it out of the park, and this did all of that. Plus, Alex Wolff. I do not remember who suggested this to me, but what a freaking movie.
What a pairing. David Fincher and Aaron Sorkin. I feel like that's a match made in heaven. Two people who are so focused on the minutia of structure and storytelling. I think almost like rigid would be a great way to describe their styles together, and I don't mean that in a bad way. And with the two of them working together, they made what I think is almost like a technically perfect film. I know that doesn't exist, but it almost feels like it, with just how calculated and dialed in this film is.
Every element is working together so well here, it's kind of understated. And of course, this has pretty much literally been studied. It's also one of, like, the quote-unquote letterboxd classics, so I'm not sure what more I can add that you probably haven't already heard or thought about this while watching the movie. It truly is a masterclass in setup and payoff, yet it never feels in your face or obvious about how it's doing this. That's what makes this film work as a biopic. It's not focused on how perfectly this film fits into a narrative structure, but it always feels like it's focused on the human aspects of the story. The characters are brought to life primarily through our main leads, Eisenberg and Garfield, who are infinitely watchable. But even Timberlake and, regrettably, Armie Hammer fit so well into these roles. I was surprised by how emotionally invested I got into the narrative, especially since I knew the whole story already and had seen clip after clip of this shared on social media. I felt like it just wouldn't click. But it's doing everything so well that it's hard to not be completely charmed and brought into what it is as a film. It makes its coding exciting, its business feel like personal war, its relationships feel like life and death, and the egos and hurt feel tangible. This is a must-watch if you're into filmmaking or just good movies, and that, yet again, is the coldest take in the world, but what more can I add? I don't remember who suggested me this masterpiece, but thank you. I mean, I had been meaning to get around to it for a long time. I had actually bought it like 2 years ago, but this gave me great motivation, which is really what is really nice about this challenge for me, because a lot of these movies I really wanted to see, but I just didn't quite have the shove to get me there.
You know, I realized in the process of writing and recording this video that all of the ones later in the year are all the ones that I forgot who suggested it to me, because most of those actually didn't come from Twitter. Only about, I think, a little over half of these were actually on Twitter. Others were messages from other platforms or text messages, and I did not keep track of those because at first I did not know I was going to do a video on this. But wow. What a film. What a brutal film.
It's unlike any other Coen brothers film I've seen, while still being entirely in their style. It's such a fascinating and interesting look into being an artist, or even just being a human. This film tries, through our struggling protagonist Lewin, to grapple with the feeling of just being an okay artist. Not one of the greats. No one will probably remember your name. You can barely make a living off of what you do, but you still do it. It hurts, and sometimes it's simply your own fault for being in the position you're in, but you gotta keep going. And you've gotta be okay with the fact that sometimes you're just okay. Whew. I've never seen a film even try and grapple with some of these themes, especially in this abstract Odyssey kind of way. At this point, I think the Coen brothers can't help themselves from making an Odyssey. Obviously, the technical aspects of this film are impressive. The Coen brothers have proved time and time again that they know what they're doing when it comes to filmmaking. The oppressive nature of the locations and atmosphere mostly comes from this fantastic use of color and cinematography and editing, and the performances are just incredible. It might be my favorite role from Oscar Isaac.
It's dripping with symbolism and literary and music references, creating this slow, meditative journey, asking questions that no artist and no human being ever wants to ask, but that we face in the mirror every time we work on something new. Also, it predominantly features cats, which is epic. It has plenty of humor, which balances out the more depressing elements of the film so well. Carey Mulligan and John Goodman are here giving hilarious performances, and there's even more of that. I mean, Please Mr. Kennedy is here with Adam Driver, and Justin Timberlake, surprisingly, is also really funny in this. And, I mean, the way this film ends, I mean, wow. There are slight variations, but the strong feeling that this is all there is. This is what it means to be an artist. Going around in circles, trying, pushing, clawing to survive through your art, and hoping that it might work one day. This is one of the most personal and intimate feeling movies I've seen, and it did make me cry at multiple points, but it also features one of the funniest songs ever, so it's, just a masterpiece. It fits so perfectly in the second to best film category on this entire list. It's powerful and profound to me personally in a way that honestly hurts. This is one of my favorite Coen Brothers films I've seen.
And we've finally made it to my favorite film that you guys suggested to me. And what a film. I had been meaning to get to this for a long time. I guess I had just been kind of pushing it back, not ever really wanting to take the leap to turn it on. But, wow. Terrence Malick is genuinely what I believe to be one of the best filmmakers ever. I genuinely believe that, especially when it comes to the topic of religion and spirituality. And for some reason I had never made it to the Terrence Malick big religious spirituality film. So, who would have thunk it that my favorite film off of this entire list was the Terrence Malick Christian film?
I haven't been subtle on this channel about the fact that I'm a Christian and how much my faith means to me, especially concerning art and filmmaking. I think art is the most religious form of expression, so I think it was just nerves keeping me from this film so long, thinking that I wouldn't love it as much as I hoped for. But when I watched this, I put in my review that I kind of felt how I feel like people describe watching 2001: A Space Odyssey. It's like an actual spiritual feeling movie. The structure of this movie is so crazy that I would have trouble even trying to summarize the plot. It follows two different timelines as Jack reconciles with his past and his relationship to spirituality and religion that was brought onto him through his relationship with his parents and family. The aggression from his father, the tragedy that the film touches on. It's a film that examines your entire life in relation to your place in the whole history and art of the world of God. And it pulls it off, and I honestly can't believe that it does. The film has several more abstract moments, and the ending in some variation of heaven is so powerful. It's a film that doesn't give any answers, just feelings and emotion. One that asks yourself to question who and what you believe in and why. It presents spirituality and God in probably my favorite way that's ever been put to screen. This is one of the movies that I've felt so strongly about since I've watched it that I've wanted to talk about it on here ever since. But it's just so personal that I almost don't have the words to put it into a simple review like this for a ranking. I mean, I could probably write pages about individual elements of the film. The way it frames nature and the progression and evolution of the world, you could literally write a book on. The pacing and unique structure, as I mentioned, paired with some of the best cinematography and lighting I've ever seen, gives the film a dreamlike feeling the whole way through. You feel like you're seeing a life flash before your eyes before you die. The story itself and family drama aren't always my favorite things in the world, but it wins me over so much through the way it chooses to engage with it on a personal level. I mean, how do you even write something like this? I know I praised the screenplay pretty heavily on Social Network and Inside Llewyn Davis, but this is one of the most impressive screenplays I've genuinely ever seen.
From its unconventional structure and style of storytelling to its abstract and artistic look at the world's creation and unique visuals, it is, at the end of the day, one of the most raw and honest feeling movies I've ever seen. It's like you've touched someone's soul spilling out over your screen. I've never experienced anything like it before or since. Terrence Malick might be one of the greatest directors and writers to ever do it. This should be the gold standard for Christian movies, or really of movies presenting any spiritual figure or God at all. And yet again, I feel like I know zero Christians in real life who have ever even heard of it. It's exhausting to know that there are so many incredible spiritual movies that so many people will never get to and instead continue to watch pure flicks. Ugh. Especially one like this that tells such an important story in such a magical way. Despite how much I loved almost every single movie on this list, this easily clears all of them for me personally. So, thank you, Marcus, for suggesting this. And seriously, I can't suggest it enough. I guarantee there is something for you on this list of films, but this is the one above everything that I would suggest and say is a must-watch. But please give them all a watch. Let me know what you think. Spread the enjoyment of new films, and again, if I were to provide a personal recommendation, it would obviously be this one.
Thank you guys so much if you made it to the end of this ranking, and I'm sorry if your movie was in an S tier. You probably just have a bad taste. I don't know what to tell you. But seriously, thank you to everyone who gave me suggestions for this. If I did not link your name or I lost the message in which I got it, I'm sorry. But go check out those who I did remember. Their links are all down in the description. As I mentioned, check out their stuff. Check out their Letterboxd profiles. Some of them have YouTube channels. They're all doing their own cool projects because there are just a lot of cool people out there. And I'm glad that I've gotten a chance to know a lot of people who are super creative and know more about movies than I do and have great taste. But this has been really fun, and I hope you guys enjoyed. Again, comment below some movies, and I'll try and take the first 12 and put them on a list if I get 12 of them. Who knows, maybe not. If not, I actually have already been working on this on Twitter, and I will combine those to make a beautiful list of films. But seriously, thank you guys for all of the love and support my channel has gotten. It means so much to me, and I can't wait to see how my European era of videos will be. Hopefully I can get back to a normal video essay next month. We'll see. I really don't know. But thank you guys for watching. I love you all. You either had amazing taste or terrible taste, and this video is definitive proof of either. Goodbye.